yards, turn right onto Dover Road. Turn right onto Dover Road. Continue for 1.5 miles. quarter of a mile, keep right to continue towards Tuns Lane.
A355.
Keep right. In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London.
Heathrow Airport.
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
Conservative MP, chairs the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, and I've read an article or quotes you believe this is like a modern-day Suez. Bear in mind, if you would, Mr. Tugendhat, some of my listeners, of course, are too young to remember Suez, as indeed are you, but of course you're a historian as well. Why do you make that parallel? Morning to you.
Good morning, Nick. Look, I make that parallel because this is one of those moments that completely exposes the reality of British foreign policy. And that reality has been exposed because the redeployment of 2,500 US troops, that's just about half as many as you need to crew a carrier, have been redeployed, and that has fundamentally changed Britain's foreign policy. That's a remarkable sign of the reality of the world today. Now, we just heard an extraordinarily courageous woman, Pashtana Durrani, who has been instrumental in starting women's education in Kandahar, and I don't know where she is now, and thank God she is still safe. But I'm afraid I've already heard reports from friends of mine that the Taliban are knocking on doors in Kabul and looking for people.
Does this all track, I know you've got a train to make, Tom, lastly, does this all track back to President Biden's decision regarding the anniversary of 9/11?
It certainly does, and it tracks back to the secret talks that President Trump held behind the back of the Afghan government. Can you imagine if he had held such talks behind the back of our government for the release and sovereignty of the IRA? I mean, it would have been extraordinary, and we would have been rightly incandescent with rage. Well, the Afghans were too. So there's sadly a bit of a pattern here of the last 2 or 3 US presidents making decisions without the consultation of the Afghan government, and now withdrawing all the assets that the Afghan military need, the helicopters and the logistics support, and then being surprised at the result.
Suez,
surprising, I'm afraid.
Suez did for Eden all the same fate before Boris Johnson.
I'm so sorry?
Suez did for Anthony Eden all the same fate before Boris Johnson.
Well, Barry, we'll have to wait and see on that one, but it was Suez was an absolute disaster for the United Kingdom, and really demonstrated that the UK really did need to invest in alliances, and all I can say is we need to do the same today.
Get on that train. Thank you, Tom Tugendhat. You chair the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, you're a Conservative MP, and you served as a former Lieutenant Colonel in the British Army in Afghanistan, so it's possibly some of those colleagues, friends, or others contacts that you made that are informing you of the latest. Okay, we'll pick up on your reaction. When I left you on Friday, they were talking about, well, actually, in some instances, there was some intelligence that was talking about months. They talked about 80 to 90 days. I think I read that the government thought they had until the end of the month, which would give them something. They had hours. The costly humiliation and the total incompetence of President Biden. We'll look at that. Also come back to debaters here in the UK.
I'm LBC's Andy Ballantyne in Kiev, where tributes for the 5 people killed in the mass shooting continued with a minute's silence.
That's after the 7:16 LBC News headlines with Simon Conway.
Large crowds of people have gathered at Kabul's airports trying to escape Afghanistan as the Taliban takes control. Applicants for permission to own a gun will be subject to social media checks in light of the Plymouth mass shooting. Double-jabbed people in England and Northern Ireland no longer need to isolate if they come into contact with people who have coronavirus. The weather, a few showers in the east and northwest, but otherwise dry with sunny spells, a high of 20 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. The A1M is now closed in both directions between junction 6 at Welling and 4 at the A414. It's because of an investigation, and as a result there are delays both ways, but especially southbound where it's slow from junction 7 at Stevenage. Still delays for about half an hour on the North Circular Road westbound between Chingford and Palmer's Green. On the train, Southeastern and Thameslink services are suspended eastbound between Dartford and Gravesend, and C2C trains can't run between Upminster and Grays via Ockendon. On the underground, the district line is suspended between Edgware Road and Wimbledon, and minor delays on the Central, Hammersmith and City, Metropolitan and Piccadilly lines.
This is LBC.
Imagine if we could spot an issue with your van before it became an issue. Imagine if we could plan vehicle repairs, parts and pickup before you arrive. You'd be back in business sooner. And could you imagine if you could have all that right now? We did. And that's why we created Ford Live. Because we believe keeping your van healthy shouldn't be an optional extra.
In 2 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
You don't, and we don't want that. To find out more, search Ford Live. We're with you on this journey. Ford Commercial Vehicles, backbone of Britain.
Ford Live is available with connected Ford commercial vehicles.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC. Running a successful business comes with many different challenges, but right now the need for good business advice is more important than ever. At Barnes Roof Accountants, we are helping our clients adapt their business strategies by looking at the best ways to cope with both the immediate and long-term impact of COVID-19. To arrange a free consultation with one of our partners, find out how we can support you and your business, please visit barnesroof.com. Barnes Roof, clever accountants for business.
This summer at Talk Talk, we've got deals that make sense. Our new Fibre Plus packages offer everything you get with our standard unlimited fibre broadband plans, plus award-winning online security, plus guaranteed fixed prices from just £26 a month for 18 months, plus the latest Amazon Echo Dot with Alexa, plus an Amazon Smart Plug. When you add it all up, it just makes sense. Fibre Plus packages from Talk Talk. For everyone, search Talk Talk Fibre. Offer ends 8 September. £4.95 posted packing. T's and C's at talktalk.co.uk.
Philip Schofield here. Did you know WeBuyAnyCar.com can help settle any outstanding finance on your car? They just sort it all out for you. And did you know you can't hum whilst holding your nose? No, me neither. Not as useful as settling outstanding finance, but good to know. Take the hassle out of selling your car and enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Admin fee may apply. For more information, see WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
I've finally found an easy way to get a GP appointment when I need one. With the Livy app, I can see a GP by video on the same day, even at the weekend. The GPs are so
In a quarter of a mile at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Livy makes seeing a doctor simple. So I can spend more time with these little rascals.
Download the Livy app now. That's L-I-V-I. Appointments cost £29, including prescriptions, sick notes and referrals.
Exit at junction 3.
I'm Zane, a customer service assistant for TfL. As you return to our network, let me remind you that you can travel safely because we're cleaning regularly with
In a quarter of a mile at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the third exit onto the Parkway, A312.
systems frequently circulate fresh air on our tubes, trains and buses. Please remember, you must wear a face covering over your nose and mouth at all times, unless you are exempt. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
The prices are guessing what are they on the front page of the newspaper 721. Let me just quickly run you through the different takes that different newspapers take, the different ways newspapers treat this particular story. The Telegraph effectively just plays it right down the middle of what's happened. The West flees as Kabul falls to the Taliban. Similar for the Guardian, the fall of Kabul. Similar for the Eye, Taliban rule returns to Afghanistan. And the Metro, the fall of Kabul. There's a picture of the Times of a number of Taliban fighters entering Kabul. Triumphant Taliban take Kabul as president flees. The idea of fleeing is also picked up by the Daily Express. Britain's flee as Afghanistan falls. The Daily Mail asks the question you may recall we asked on Friday, what the hell did they all die for? And they refer to the fact that 457 British military personnel were killed. They actually feature a photograph of the coffin bearing one of those fatalities, Sergeant Michael Lockett, and a number of colleagues bearing his coffin. As I say, that powerful headline, a question we asked on Friday, what the hell did they all die for? Escape from Kabul is the front page of The Sun. This is Brits fleeing Afghan hell, and in a related line or aspect, the front page of the Daily Mirror, Paras in to save 6,000 troops. We'll be hearing from Defence Secretary later on that. And lastly, I don't know what time they print the Financial Times, but it must be incredibly early in the afternoon, because it seems extraordinary. Yes, this is Monday's. Taliban on brink of taking over Afghanistan as President flees. Well, they must have printed that about 2 o'clock in the afternoon because it's moved on. And we'll take your calls on that in just a moment. But of course, we are reflecting matters here in the UK. There's a couple of big, well, more than two, that's just two very important stories. One of which is that life returns to some form of normality as regards self.
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
Then we'll have more on that. But let's go to Plymouth, of course. The scene of that horrific shooting that we covered for you on Friday. We'll be talking more later.
Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
These gun checks, but the latest from the scene and from the location of that horrific shooting from LBC's reporter Andy Ballantyne. Andy.
Nick, good morning. Well, residents in Keam in this part of Plymouth have been praised for their extraordinarily brave response. Hundreds turned up for a candlelit vigil in what was the first public show of solidarity for the victims of this unthinkable mass shooting. Tributes, flowers, cuddly toys and candles have been left at various locations as the community starts to grieve. Two of the cordons which have been in place since the tragic events in Key and Plymouth last Thursday night are now being dismantled. Crime scene investigators investigators have been continuing to carry out examinations of the scenes since the shooting, which led to the deaths of 5 people. A mother and son who were also injured during the incident, while the family have told LBC both are thankfully expected to make a full recovery. Residents are putting 5 green hearts in the windows of their homes or on display to represent the 5 victims who sadly lost their lives. Ricky Fenn painted huge green hearts on the outside of his house.
Just seeing what had happened and seeing the hearts of this hashtag Plymouth Together, it's kind of everybody's pulled together throughout it. I kind of thought we'd do something reaching out towards the community. Plays on everybody's minds if you're a family person, doesn't it? You know, family's everything to everyone, I think.
With 13 potential crime scenes, officers from Wiltshire Police, West Mercia Police and Avon and Somerset.
In a quarter of a mile, at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the Parkway, A312.
Burdick Drive will remain a secured scene and forensic examinations will remain ongoing at that location over the coming days. Police say they'd like to thank the local residents for their continued patience during this time. Support continues to be offered to those affected by the shootings. And finally, Nick, at 11 o'clock, the city and Devon is being asked to fall silent for a minute in tribute to those killed.
Andy Valentine reporting later in the show. We're bringing up 2 aspects of that. One is that for some people it was a form of a terror attack, what that gunman took place because he was a member of the incel movement. Now, you have to have sort of read up about this as I did on the weekend. That's part of the involuntary celibate organisation, Incel. And they believe in some instances they blame their mums or indeed their parents because they believe they've been born so ugly that they can't take partners. In this particular man's case, it would be girlfriends. They even have a belief that women should actually give them sex because they believe they're so ugly they are involuntary celibate, incels.
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
By an incel.
Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
Gun checks, a number of former senior police officers saying we need better checks. And also the suggestion from one charity that if you have autism, as it is reported that this man had autism, you should never be given a gun licence under any circs, ever. No gun licence for anyone with autism. We're looking at all those aspects. Let's come back to the situation in Afghanistan, and where we have now a virtual 20-year campaign ending in hours. Paul in Orpington. Paul, your reaction. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm quite furious. I mean, first of all, I never believed that we should have gone in there in the first place. But
I think you're wrong, respectfully.
Well, I don't. And if we are going to go in there, we need to do the job properly.
Absolutely
and I
right.
think Boris and Biden should be hanging their heads in shame. And so, you know, everyone's got this wrong, even down to the media. Everyone's got this wrong because they were all broadcasting over the weekend that it was going to be weeks before Kabul. You've got the Taliban sitting there in waiting for 20 years.
Yeah.
You can't build a mass army within hours. They were waiting for their time and they've taken back their country as they see it. And I think this meeting and the recuperating of government should be the time that Boris gives in his notice because he has got this country.
So, you mean when he recalls Parliament on Wednesday? Is that what you mean, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. He should be giving him his notice because he's Biden's puppet, really, and always has been in with Trump. And I think the pair of them should be hanging their heads in shame of what they've got to go and do now. And all these poor people trying to leave the country, the British citizens, it's an absolute disgrace that we've got this so wrong.
I think a lot of people would agree with you. We also need to, of course, as Tom Tugendhat, the MP, said, let's not forget President Trump's involved in this as well, with those talks that took place on his watch. But again, Biden's silence tells you everything. His silence is fairly condemning, I would have thought. Paul, thank you. Be well. Your namesake, another Paul in Ealing. Paul, you're on the radio. Good morning. Your reaction to what we saw play out yesterday?
Morning, Nick. My reaction is, we've been there for 20 years and so many people lost their lives, American and British.
Yes.
We've been there 20 years, cleaning the place up, training these people. We hear they've got an air force, they've got army, they've got the arms. We've given them everything, the best training that they can have. Taliban turn up and they've dropped everything and they've gone running to their houses and they're hiding.